Having discussed the meaning of environmentalism and its historical emergence, in the second part of this class, let's discuss about the global spread of environmentalism. So in the second wave of environmentalism is essentially about transformation of the intellectual ideas or the intellectual response to industrial revolution to that of a mass movement. So in the second wave, we realize that environmentalism has transformed into a mass popular public movement for protection of nature. While the first wave starts with an examination of the British tradition, starts with an examination of the British literary tradition, the second wave of environmentalism begins with an analysis of the radical American environmentalism and its global and its expansion to the third world societies. So in that sense, Ramchandra Guha identifies two strands in the second wave of environmentalism: the ecology of affluence and the southern challenge. In ecology of affluence, Guha basically talks about emergence of environmental ideas in the American context, emergence of radical environmental ideas in the American context, and in the second wave, Ramchandra Guha discusses emergence of environmental ideas in the third world societies or in the developing societies. So in the second wave, environmentalism spreads, or it transforms from being an idea which emerged in the colonial world or which emerged in the European context to that of its expansion to the American context and to the third world societies. When we look at the emergence of environmental ideas in America, or when we look at the first strand of the second wave of environmentalism, we realize that there are three books which emerge as influential ideas in which significantly influence emergence of popular environmental movements and popular environmentalism in the American context. These three books are Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, Paul Ehrlich's The Population Bomb, and The Meadows and Meadows, The Limits to Growth. These three publications essentially identified that there is a limit to the ecological system, or there is a limit to the ecosystem, and it pointed out towards different impacts of or different human induced impacts on natural resources. For example, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring book pointed out that or the central problem for Rachel Carson's Silent Spring book is that of the contamination of the environment by substances with incredible potential of harm, so this book, or Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, talks about pollution, talks about degradation of nature coming out of DDT, coming out of industrial effluents, or coming out of industrial waste. So therefore, it is the pollution from pesticides, pollution from industrial effluents, pollution from DDT, pollution from chemical waste that emerged as central challenge for the Rachel Carson's Silent Spring book. Similarly, Paul Ehrlich's Population Bomb identified the problems with rising population. This book provided a doomsday scenario which essentially highlighted that because of population growth or because of population increase, a time will come when resources will not be sufficient to fulfill our demands. Similarly, Meadows and Meadows Limits to Growth pointed out that economic growth or economic expansion, capitalist expansion, one day will crash into the limits of the earth's finite resources. This book essentially was a much influential book which highlighted that there is a limit to earth resources, and the earth resources are finite, and unlimited economic growth, unlimited economic expansion, capitalist expansion cannot be possible with these finite resources. So these three influential books resulted in popular ideas, or these three books resulted in popularizing the idea of environmental conservation, environmental protection in the American context. And in the second wave of environmentalism, what we see, expansion of environmental ideas to that of American context, and emergence of popular movements, emergence of popular protest against environmental degradation. Ecology of affluence in the American context manifests itself through two important events, or through two important aspects. One is emergence of radical American environmentalism, which argued for a biocentric egalitarianism, as opposed to the anthropocentrism. So this biocentric egalitarianism basically pointed out that human beings are just one element in the ecosystem, and therefore different elements of the ecosystem has equal share on the earth, in that sense that human beings are not superior, so therefore they cannot claim a superior share on the planet earth. Human beings have to share the planet earth with other living animals and with other plants. So in that sense, resources should be equally shared by different living beings in this earth, and in that sense human beings are not superior, so therefore our demand on nature should be curbed, or our extraction of nature should be limited. So these biocentric ideas were put forth as opposed to the anthropocentric ideas, and anthropocentric ideas basically point out towards a kind of philosophy which considers humans as superiors, or which considers human beings as superior. So therefore it believes that, so anthropocentric ideas believes that nature exists to support human life on earth, so therefore human beings as their superior species, they have the ability, they have the command to capture the nature or to control the nature. So as opposed to this anthropocentric ideas, biocentrism basically argued for an egalitarian share of nature, for an equal share of nature between humans and the non-human world. Secondly, the American environmentalism also manifested through the emergence of the environmental justice movement, especially from late 70s or early 80s. Environmental justice emerged as one of the most popular or most dominating environmental movement in America. So environmental justice movement emerged in the context of dumping of toxic waste in the Love Canal in the New York, where it was realized that these toxic wastes are dominated mostly in the black neighborhoods, or these toxic waste were deposited, or the toxic sites or the deposit sites were existing mostly in the geographical areas which are inhabited by the black community. So therefore therefore the ideas of class, the ideas of ethnicity were integrated with that of environmental ideas, because it was realized that environmental pollutions or environmental degradations are affecting different classes differently. So therefore black environmentalism or environmental ideas or environmental movement which essentially hampered the health conditions of the black communities, that became an important environmental movement in America. So in that sense, ecology of affluence was manifested through two essential aspects. One is that of emergence of radical environmentalism in America, which talks about conservation of nature because it identifies merits of conservation, and secondly, environmental ideas in America was manifested through the environmental justice movement, which essentially highlighted the linkages between class and environmental degradation. So now when we move to the second strand of the second wave, we see we realize that Ramchandra Guha talks about expansion of environmental ideas to that of the global south. While the first strand of environmental movement was limited to expansion, was limited to elaboration of environmental ideas as it occurred in America, in the second strand Ramchandra Guha talks about expansion of environmental ideas to that of global south. And here in the global south or in the developing world, we find a different kind of challenge, we find a different kind of environmental ideas. So the southern challenge, the southern environmental ideas basically challenge the idea that environmentalism is a phenomenon of the north and a product of post-materialism. While environmental ideas of the Northern America, or while American radical environmental ideas was raising the issues of pollution, was raising the issues of impact of industrialization, environmental movements in the third world societies or environmental movement in the developing societies pointed out different aspects. So in that sense, environmental movements in the third world or the developing countries, that pointed out altogether a different question. So the third world environmental ideas are conceptualized as environmentalism the poor by Ramchandra Guha. So there are specific features, or there are specific propositions of these environmental ideas which grew up or which emerged in the global south or in the developing societies. So these southern environmental ideas, or the environmental ideas which emerged in the global south or in the developing countries, that combined concern for environmental movement with equal and visible concern for social justice, where environmental degradation was so in these southern countries or in these developing countries, it was realized that environmental degradation has a different manifestation, it has a different connotation, that environmental degradation results in degradation of livelihood, environmental degradation results in or the pollution results in or it negatively affects the livelihood patterns or negatively affects the livelihood opportunities. So these kind of ideas, or the southern environmental ideas, relied heavily on traditional networks, on community lives ideas. And again, the methods of protest in the southern countries, or the methods of protest in environmental movements in the global south also was highly influenced by the Gandhian ideas. And the basic thing, or the basic idea to that the basic point that emerges from environmental ideas of the global south is that these environmental movements in the developing countries emerge in the production process itself, while environmental movements in the American context were highlighted issues like pollution, he highlighted issues like industrial effluents, industrial waste. In the southern countries, the environmental ideas combined issues of social justice, issues of ethnicity, issues of caste, issues of class. So in that sense, environmentalism manifested through a different kind of language, environmentalism manifested through a different kind of issues. So environmental ideas or environmental movements that emerge in southern countries essentially pointed out that these conflicts or these struggles are not just for a better environment, these struggles are not just for a greener nature, these struggles are also for a better community, these struggles are also for better livelihood. In that sense, these struggles are also for better human rights. So issues of human rights, issues of ethnicity, issues of social justice, these are juxtaposed, or these are combined with that of environmental ideas. So therefore, when environmentalism spread to the global south, or when environmental ideas was expanded to that of global south, it was combined with several other related ideas of social justice, human rights, ethnicity, and issues of gender, class, and caste. So let us summarize the second part of this lecture, that is global spread of environmental ideas. When we see that the first part of when we see that the first wave of environmentalism was essentially European or the British, the second wave of environmentalism, or the expansion of environmentalism, talks about the expansion of these ideas to that of America and the rest of the world. So this expansion, or the expansion of environmental ideas to the global south, or to the developing countries, points the fact, or it highlights the fact that environmentalism is not just a literary appreciation or a scientific managerial approach. Environmentalism is essentially about conflicts that happens on the street, that happens these essentially are conflicts that happens over the issues of resource extraction, that happens over the issues of forest, water, and mineral resources. So one thing becomes clear, that as environmentalism expanded to the global south, as environmentalism expanded to different parts of the world, there is a gradual transformation from environmental ideas being that of an scientific ideas of managing the nature, being that of an scientific idea to conserve the nature, to that of a popular idea to begin a collective mobilization against environmental degradation. And in this collective mobilization, the central idea is not just a greener environment, central idea is not just protecting the nature. Along with nature protection, along with conservation of nature, several other ideas like conservation of humanity, conservation of communities, conservation of livelihoods, they were also combined with that of environmental ideas. So in that sense, expansion of environmentalism also is expansion of issues that were involved in these environmental movements. In the first wave, while issue was centrally about nature, which manifested either through different literary works, literary appreciations, or through scientific knowledge. In the second wave, the issue was diversified. Now we talk about, when we think about an environmental movement, we realize that these environmental concerns are juxtaposed with ideas of livelihood, ideas of social justice, ideas of human rights, and ideas or issues concerning gender, caste, ethnicity, and class. In that sense, the global expansion of environmentalism, or the global expansion of environmental movement has diversified the concept of environmentalism, and environmentalism has emerged as a plural, as a diversified, as a multifaceted concept.